Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship looking out at the dark space ahead. His hands gripped the metal rail as he watched the stars. Everything was quiet on the Earth vessel called Defiant Dawn, too quiet for his liking. "Captain, we're getting something on the long-range sensors," said Commander Lisa Rodriguez from her station. She was the best communications officer in the Earth fleet. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls as strange signals filled her screens. Jake walked over to look at the data. "What kind of something?" "Big something, really big." Lisa's voice had a worried tone. "The computer says it's about 50 times larger than our biggest ships." Lieutenant Ben Carter looked up from his weapons station. His young face was pale. "Captain, that thing is coming straight at us, fast." Jake felt his heart beat faster but kept his voice calm. "How fast?" "It will be here in 6 hours, Ben said." "Should I charge the weapons?" "Not yet." Jake knew that if this alien ship wanted to destroy them, their small weapons would not help much. "Lisa, try to talk to them." Lisa worked at her station. "For several minutes. I'm getting a response, Captain. They're using our own radio signals somehow. They learned our language. Put it on speaker." The bridge filled with a deep, strange voice. The words were English but spoken in a way that made everyone feel cold. "Primitive beings of the third planet, you will prepare for the arrival of the Zephyrian Galactic Empire. Your world has been selected for integration into our domain." Jake looked around at his crew. They all had the same worried look. "Integration?" The alien voice continued. "You will cease all military activities. You will gather your leaders for a meeting with our representatives. You will prepare tribute as befits your new status as subjects of the Empire." "Subjects?" Jake said out loud. "Lisa, are you recording this?" "Yes, sir, every word." "The Supreme Sovereign Vex Thara himself will honor your species with his presence. He will accept your surrender and explain your new duties to the Empire. Resistance is not permitted. Compliance is expected within 1 standard cycle." The transmission ended. The bridge was quiet except for the soft sounds of the ship's systems. 1 standard cycle, Ben said slowly. "How long is that?" "Based on their signal timing, about 24 Earth hours," Lisa answered. Jake pressed a button on his chair. "All hands, this is the captain. We just made first contact with an alien empire. They want us to surrender. I'm calling a meeting of all senior officers in the conference room in 10 minutes. He turned to Lisa. "Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them what just happened. And ask them to wake up Admiral Kate Sullivan." "The Admiral won't like being woken up at 3 in the morning, Lisa said. "She like aliens demanding our surrender even less." 20 minutes later, Jake sat in the conference room with his senior staff. The table was covered with data tablets and coffee cups. Everyone looked tired and worried. "Let me make sure I understand this," said Dr. Alex Chun, the ship's science officer. "These Zephyrians have conquered 400 star systems. They expect us to give them tribute every year. And they want some of our people as servants. That's what they said." Jake rubbed his eyes. He had been in space for 6 months and was looking forward to going home next week. Now everything had changed. "What kind of tribute?" asked Commander Rodriguez. Dr. Chun read from his tablet. "Rare metals, advanced technology, and 10% of our population between the ages of 18 and 30. 10%? Ben Carter's voice cracked. "That's like 300 million people." "They call it voluntary service contribution," Dr. Chun said. "But I don't think it's really voluntary." Jake stood up and walked to the window. The alien ship was still too far away to see, but he could feel it coming. "What do we know about their technology?" "Their ship is huge," said Chief Engineer Tony Martinez. "Our sensors show it has weapons that could destroy our entire fleet. Their shields are stronger than anything we've ever seen. But," Dr. Chun added, "their technology isn't that much better than ours, just bigger and older." They've been building the same kind of ships for hundreds of years. What does that mean? Jake asked. It means they don't innovate much. They find something that works and stick with it. We humans are always trying new things. That might be an advantage. Lisa's communication device buzzed. Captain, Admiral Sullivan is on the line from Earth. The main screen lit up with the face of Admiral Kate Sullivan. She was sitting in her home office wearing a bathrobe and looking very awake despite the early hour. Jake, I just read your report. Is this some kind of joke? No, ma'am. We have an alien empire demanding our surrender. Their representative will be here tomorrow. Admiral Sullivan was quiet for a moment. I've been expecting something like this for years. We always wondered what we would find when we went to the stars. Looks like the stars found us first. What are your orders, Admiral? I'm sending you backup. The ship's brave heart and New Freedom will reach you in 18 hours. But Jake, I want you to handle the first meeting. Me? Shouldn't this be a job for diplomats? We don't have any diplomats trained for this situation. You and your crew are humanity's first contact team, whether you like it or not. Dr. Chun leaned forward. Admiral, what if they attack when we don't surrender? Then we fight, but let's try talking first. Maybe we can find a way to avoid a war. After the call ended, Jake looked around the table at his crew. These people had become like family during their long mission. Now they might be the most important humans in history. All right, people. Tomorrow we meet aliens who think they own us. Any ideas on how to handle that? We could try to impress them with our technology, suggested Tony. Or show them our military strength, added Ben. Dr. Chun shook his head. I've been reading about their other conquests. They always use the same approach. They send their supreme sovereign to meet with local leaders. He makes a big speech about how powerful the empire is. Then he demands immediate surrender. It works because most species get scared. Most species, Jake repeated. But not all? According to their own records, about 90% surrender immediately. The other 10% fight and lose. Lisa looked up from her tablet. Captain, I'm getting more transmissions from their ship. They're sending us detailed instructions for the surrender ceremony. What kind of instructions? We're supposed to prepare a special room. We need to have all our leaders kneeling when the Supreme Sovereign arrives. We're supposed to offer him gifts and promise to obey all his commands. Jake felt something stirring in his chest. It wasn't fear. It was something else. Something that made him want to laugh. They want us to kneel? And call him your supreme magnificence or eternal master. Now Jake did laugh. It started as a small chuckle, but grew louder. Soon the whole room was looking at him with surprise. Captain, Lisa asked, are you okay? I'm fine. It's just, have they met humans before? This is first contact, Dr. Chun said. Then they have no idea what they're dealing with. Jake's smile grew wider. Lisa, send them a message. Tell them, we'll meet with their supreme sovereign, but we'll do it our way, not theirs. What should I tell them about the surrender ceremony? Tell them we need to discuss terms first. No ceremonies until we talk. As his crew got back to work, Jake stayed in the conference room thinking. Tomorrow would bring the most important meeting in human history. An alien empire expected Earth to surrender without a fight. They thought humans would be scared of their big ships and fancy titles. Jake looked out at the stars and smiled. They were about to learn something new about the human species. Humans didn't scare easily. And they definitely didn't kneel to anyone. No matter how many worlds they claimed to rule, the Zephyrian Empire was about to get the surprise of their very long lives. The next morning came too fast for Captain Jake Morrison. He stood in front of the mirror in his quarters trying to decide what to wear to meet the most powerful being in the galaxy. His uniform seemed too formal. His casual clothes seemed too casual. Finally, he chose his regular captain's uniform, but left off the medals and fancy decorations. "This isn't a parade," he said to himself. "It's a conversation." The bridge was busy when Jake arrived. Commander Lisa Rodriguez was at her station talking to the other Earthships that had arrived during the night. Lieutenant Ben Carter was checking weapon systems, even though they all knew their guns would be useless against the massive alien ship. "Status report," Jake said as he sat in his captain's chair. "The Brave Heart and New Freedom are in position," Lisa said. "Captain Murphy and Captain Davis are standing by for orders." "And our alien friends?" "They've been sending messages all morning. Very detailed instructions about how we should behave during the meeting." Dr. Alex Chun walked onto the bridge carrying a thick tablet. "Captain, you need to see this. I've been studying their culture based on the messages they sent." Jake looked at the tablet. It showed pictures and descriptions of other species that had surrendered to the Zephyrian Empire. "What am I looking at? This is how they do it. The Supreme Sovereign arrives with great ceremony. He's 12 feet tall with a crystal shell covering his body. He glows with different colors to show his emotions. When he's angry, he turns red. When he's pleased, he turns gold. Like a mood ring." Ben said with a small smile, "Exactly. But the important part is what happens next." He gives a speech about how powerful the Empire is. He lists all the worlds they've conquered. He talks about their weapons and their armies. The whole thing is designed to make people afraid. Jake studied the pictures. The alien looked impressive but also somehow ridiculous. Like someone wearing too much armor to a business meeting. And this works? Every time. Look at these records. Species after species falls to their knees after hearing the speech. They surrender everything and beg for mercy. Chief Engineer Tony Martinez joined them. "I've been analyzing their ship. It's powerful but old. Really old. Their technology hasn't changed much in the last 1,000 years. That's strange," Jake said. "Most civilizations keep improving their technology. Not if you're winning every battle," Dr. Chun explained. "Why change something that works? The Zephyrians found a formula for conquest and they stick to it. Until now," Jake said quietly. Lisa's console beeped. "Captain, they're requesting permission to beam over their advance team." "Beam over?" "Teleportation technology. They want to inspect our meeting room and make sure everything is set up correctly for the ceremony." Jake thought for a moment. "Tell them yes. But they inspect our conference room, not some special ceremony room. And tell them we'll have our own people present during the inspection." An hour later, Jake stood in the conference room with Dr. Chun and Commander Rodriguez. The room looked normal. Table, chairs, a large window showing the stars outside. Nothing fancy or ceremonial. A bright light filled the center of the room. When it faded, 2 7-foot-tall aliens stood there. They looked like walking crystal statues with too many arms and glowing eyes. They moved slowly and carefully, as if everything they did was part of some ancient ritual. The taller alien spoke through a translation device. "I am Harold Zaxamore. I prepare the way for the Supreme Sovereign. This room is not acceptable." "What's wrong with it?" Jake asked. "Where is the throne for His Magnificence? Where are the tribute offerings? Where are the kneeling platforms for your leaders? We don't have those things." Harold Zaxamore's crystal body flickered from blue to yellow. Jake guessed that meant confusion. "All subjects provide proper ceremony space. It is required." "We're not subjects yet," Jake said calmly. "We're here to discuss terms." "Terms?" The alien's color shifted to orange. "There are no terms. There's only surrender and compliance." Dr. Chun stepped forward. "Harold Zaxamore, we understand your empire is very powerful. But humans prefer to negotiate before making major decisions." "Negotiate?" The alien's color turned bright red. "Inferior species do not negotiate with the Empire. They submit or they are destroyed. Jake felt that same strange feeling from yesterday. The urge to laugh was getting stronger. These aliens were like bullies on a playground. Big and scary until someone stood up to them. "Well, we're going to try something different," Jake said. "We'll listen to what your Supreme Sovereign has to say, but we're not kneeling to anyone." The second alien, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "This is unprecedented. No species has ever refused proper ceremony. First time for everything," Commander Rodriguez said with a slight smile. Harold Zaxamore's color cycled through several shades before settling on a dark purple. "I must report this to the Supreme Sovereign. He will not be pleased. Tell him we look forward to meeting him," Jake said. "As equals." After the aliens left, Dr. Chun shook his head. "Jake, I think you just broke their computer." "What do you mean?" "They have a program for conquest. Step 1. Intimidate with ceremony. Step 2. Make surrender speech. Step 3. Accept submission. We just skipped step 1 and they don't know what to do." 2 hours later, Lisa announced that the Supreme Sovereign was ready to beam over. Jake gathered his senior staff in the conference room. Everyone was nervous but trying not to show it. "Remember," Jake said, "we're representing all of humanity here. Be respectful but don't be afraid. They're just people, even if they look different." The bright light filled the room again, but this time it was much brighter. When it faded, a massive figure stood in the center of the conference room. Supreme Sovereign Vex Thara was everything the reports had described and more. 12 feet tall, covered in crystalline armor that pulsed with golden light. He had 4 arms and eyes that glowed like stars. Behind him stood 6 guards in similar but less impressive armor. The Supreme Sovereign looked around the room, clearly expecting to see humans on their knees. Instead, he saw Jake and his crew standing casually around a conference table. Jake was leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. Dr. Chun was sitting in a chair reading a tablet. Commander Rodriguez was pouring herself coffee from a pot. In the corner, Vexthara's golden glow shifted to orange, then red. "Where is the proper ceremony? Where are your leaders prostrated before their new master?" "I'm Captain Jake Morrison, commanding officer of this vessel," Jake said, pushing himself off the wall. "These are my senior officers. Would you like some coffee?" The Supreme Sovereign's color cycled rapidly through several shades. His guards shifted nervously behind him. This was clearly not going according to their usual script. "I am Supreme Sovereign Vex Thara, eternal ruler of 417 star systems, crusher of rebellions, master of the void, bringer of order to chaos." His voice boomed through the room's speakers. Jake nodded politely. "Nice to meet you. Please, have a seat. Though you might be too tall for our chairs." Dr. Chun looked up from his tablet. "We can bring in some larger furniture if you'd be more comfortable." Vex Thara stared at them in what Jake assumed was disbelief. "You dare address the Supreme Sovereign as an equal? You offer furniture to the Master of the Galaxy?" "Well, standing for a long meeting seems uncomfortable," Commander Rodriguez said, sipping her coffee. "But if you prefer to stand, that's fine." 2. The Supreme Sovereign's glow turned the brightest red Jake had ever seen. His 4 arms gestured dramatically as he began his conquest speech. "Behold, primitive beings of this backward world. I have conquered civilizations that span 1,000 star systems. I have crushed empires that ruled for 10,000 years. I have brought order to the chaos of the galaxy and unity to the scattered peoples of space." Jake listened politely, but something about the whole performance struck him as funny. The dramatic poses, the glowing colors, the elaborate titles. It was like watching someone act out a part in a very serious play about themselves. "My fleets darken the void between stars," Vexthara continued. "My armies number in the billions. Entire worlds tremble at the mention of my name. The very fabric of space bends to my will. Ben Carter whispered to Tony Martinez, "Does he write his own material?" Tony tried not to smile. "Sounds like he's been practicing in front of a mirror." The Supreme Sovereign noticed the whispering, and his glow turned even brighter red. "Silence before your master. I am the eternal destroyer of worlds, the crusher of civilizations, the final judge of all who dare oppose the Empire." That's when it happened. Jake couldn't help himself anymore. The whole situation was just too ridiculous. A 12-foot-tall, glowing alien calling himself the eternal destroyer of worlds, while standing in a conference room with a coffee pot in the corner. Jake started to chuckle. The chuckle grew into a laugh. Dr. Chun looked at his captain with surprise, then started smiling himself. Commander Rodriguez put her hand over her mouth, but couldn't stop the giggle that escaped. Soon the entire human delegation was laughing. Not mean laughter, but the kind of laughter that comes when something is so over-the-top ridiculous that you can't take it. Seriously. Supreme Sovereign Vexthara stood frozen in the middle of his conquest speech, his color cycling frantically through shades no one had ever seen before. His guards looked at each other in confusion. The laughter in the conference room slowly died down, but the smiles remained on every human face. Captain Jake Morrison wiped tears from his eyes and tried to compose himself. Supreme Sovereign Vexthara stood motionless in the room, his crystal body flickering through colors that his own guards had never seen before. "I'm sorry," Jake said, still fighting back chuckles. "It's just that the whole eternal destroyer of worlds thing is a bit much, don't you think?" Vexthara's forearms trembled with what the humans assumed was rage. His voice came out as a low growl through the translation system. "You dare mock the Supreme Sovereign of the Zephyrian Empire?" Dr. Alex Chun leaned forward in his chair, still smiling. "We're not mocking you personally. It's just that your titles are so dramatic. How many worlds have you actually destroyed?" "I have conquered 417 star systems," Vexthara said, his color shifting to deep purple. "Conquered, yes. But destroyed?" Commander Lisa Rodriguez asked. "Because if you destroy worlds, you can't collect tribute from them. That doesn't make good business sense." The Supreme Sovereign's guards exchanged glances. One of them stepped forward slightly, as if to speak, but Vexthara raised one of his arms, and the guard stopped. "The Empire brings order to chaos," Vexthara said, but his voice lacked the booming confidence from before. "We civilize primitive species and integrate them into our glorious domain." "Right," Jake said, nodding. "So you're more like the Eternal Integrator of Worlds or the Supreme Tax Collector. Those titles are more accurate, but not as scary." Lieutenant Ben Carter had to cover his mouth to keep from laughing again. Chief Engineer Tony Martinez was studying the alien guards with interest. They seemed uncomfortable, shifting from foot to foot and avoiding eye contact with their Supreme Sovereign. "You will show proper respect," Vexthara demanded, his glow returning to angry red. "I am your master now. You will kneel before me and accept your place in the Empire." "Actually," Dr. Chun said, pulling out his tablet, "we've been looking at your Empire's structure. It's fascinating from an anthropological perspective." "Anthropological?" one of the guards asked, speaking for the first time. "The study of cultures and societies," Dr. Chun explained. "Your empire is a classic example of authoritarian hierarchy based on fear and submission. Very stable in the short term, but historically these systems have some interesting weaknesses." Vexthara color cycled rapidly. "The empire has lasted for 3,000 years. "That's impressive," Jake admitted. "But you know what's interesting? In all that time, has your technology improved much?" Tony Martinez stood up from his chair. "I've been analyzing your ship. The basic design is at least 2,000 years old. Your weapons, your shields, your propulsion, all ancient technology that you've just made bigger." "Our technology is superior to all others," Vexthara stated, but there was less certainty in his voice. Superior to what you've encountered so far, Commander Rodriguez corrected. But when was the last time you actually had to innovate? When did you last face a real challenge? The room fell quiet, except for the soft hum of the ship's systems. The Supreme Sovereign stood motionless while his guards looked increasingly uncomfortable. Finally, one of the guards spoke up. "Supreme Sovereign, perhaps we should hear what these humans have to say." Vexthara's head turned toward the guard, so fast that Jake thought it might break. "You dare question the Supreme Sovereign's judgment? Captain Nexville?" The guard, Captain Nexville, stepped back but didn't retreat completely. "No, Supreme Sovereign. But these beings are different from previous conquests." "Different how?" Jake asked, genuinely curious. Captain Nexville looked between his Supreme Sovereign and the humans. "In 417 conquests, no species has ever laughed at the ceremony of submission. Most flee in terror. Some fight desperately. All eventually surrender, but none have ever found it." "Amusing." Dr. Chen nodded thoughtfully. "That makes sense. Fear is a powerful tool for control. But it only works if people are actually afraid." "And we're not afraid," Jake said simply. "Your ship is bigger than ours, your weapons are stronger, but that doesn't make you our master. It just makes you someone with bigger guns." "Bigger guns usually win wars," Vexthara said, some of his confidence returning. "Sometimes," Tony Martinez agreed, "but not always. Sometimes the side with smaller guns but better ideas wins. Sometimes the side that can adapt and change defeats the side that's stuck doing things the same old way." "Are you threatening the Empire?" Vexthara demanded. "No," Jake said, sitting down in his chair and gesturing for the aliens to do the same. "We're trying to have a conversation. Look, you came here expecting us to surrender immediately. We didn't. Now what?" The Supreme Sovereign stared at Jake for a long moment. His color slowly shifted from red to orange to yellow. "Now you will. Be destroyed as an example to others who would dare defy the Empire." "And then what?" Commander Rodriguez asked. "You blow up Earth. You get no tribute, no technology, no new subjects. You gain nothing except the reputation for destroying a world. That laughed at you. How does that help your empire?" Captain Nexville stepped forward again. "Supreme Sovereign, she makes a valid point. The Empire gains strength through integration, not destruction." "I know what strengthens the Empire," Vexthara snapped. But his voice cracked slightly. Jake stood up and walked to the window overlooking space. "You know what I think? I think you're stuck. Your whole system depends on people being afraid of you. But we're not afraid, and you don't know what to do about it." "The Empire has protocols for dealing with resistance," Vexthara said. "Resistance?" "Yes, but not indifference." Dr. Chun consulted his tablet again. "Every species you've conquered fought you or surrendered immediately. None of them treated you like just another government trying to expand its territory. That's all you are, isn't it?" Jake turned from the window. "You're not gods or cosmic forces. You're just people with a really big military who've gotten used to bullying smaller civilizations." The silence that followed was different from before. It wasn't the shocked silence of beings who couldn't believe what they were hearing. It was the thoughtful silence of minds processing new ideas. Finally, Captain Nexville spoke. "What would you propose instead of surrender?" Vexthara's color flared bright red. "Captain Nexville, you forget your place." "With respect, Supreme Sovereign, maybe it's time to consider that our place might need to change." The other guards murmured. Agreement. Jake could see that something important was happening. The absolute authority that Vexthara had always taken for granted was beginning to crack. "What we propose," Jake said carefully, "is cooperation instead of domination. Trade instead of tribute. Alliance instead of conquest." "Impossible," Vexthara sighed, but his voice was weaker now. "The Empire does not make alliances with inferior species. Who says we're inferior?" Commander Rodriguez asked. We got to the stars on our own. We developed faster-than-light travel without conquering anyone. We've built a civilization based on cooperation and voluntary participation. Voluntary participation is chaos, Vexthara insisted. Order requires hierarchy. Hierarchy requires submission. Does it? Dr. Chun asked. Or does it just require everyone to agree on common goals and work together to achieve them? Tony Martinez pulled out his own tablet and showed it to the aliens. Look at this ship. Every system was designed by a different team. The engines by one group, the life support by another, the computers by a third. But they all work together. Because they were built with common standards and shared objectives. No single person designed this ship, Jake added. No supreme authority dictated every detail. Thousands of people contributed their expertise, and the result is better than any one person could have created alone. Captain Nexville studied the tablet with obvious interest. This is how all human technology is developed. Most of it, Jake confirmed. We compete with each other, sure. But we also share knowledge, build on each other's work, and solve problems. Together, and it works? Another guard asked. Well, enough to get us to the stars and build ships that apparently worry your supreme sovereign enough to demand our immediate surrender, Commander Rodriguez said with a smile. Vexthara's glow had faded to a dim yellow. For the first time since arriving, he looked uncertain rather than angry. His forearms hung at his sides instead of gesturing dramatically. This changes nothing, he said finally. The Empire's decision stands, submit or be destroyed. But Jake could hear the doubt in his voice. And more importantly, he could see the doubt in the faces of the guards. The foundation of absolute authority was starting to crumble, and everyone in the room knew it. Well, Jake said, settling back into his chair, if those are our only two options, then I guess we choose option 3. There is no option 3, Vexthara said. Jake smiled. There is now. We choose to keep talking until we find a better solution, one that works for everyone. The supreme sovereign of the Zephyrian Empire stood in the middle of a human conference room, surrounded by beings who refused to fear him, and for the first time in his very long life, he had absolutely no idea what to do next. Captain Jake Morrison watched Supreme Sovereign Vexthara stand motionless in the center of the conference room. The massive alien's crystal body had dimmed to a pale yellow glow, and his forearms hung at his sides like he had forgotten how to use them. His guards shifted nervously behind him, stealing glances at each other when they thought their leader wasn't looking. You know what? Jake said, breaking the uncomfortable silence. Let's try something different. Instead of talking about surrender and destruction, why don't you tell us about your empire? What's it really like to rule 400 star systems? Vexthara's glow flickered slightly. What kind of question is that? An honest one, Dr. Alex Chen said, setting down his tablet. We're curious. How do you manage so many different worlds? How do you keep them all working together? Through strength and order, Vexthara replied automatically, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. Right, but practically speaking, Commander Lisa Rodriguez said, pouring herself another cup of coffee. Do you personally visit every world? Do you make every decision? How does the day-to-day government actually work? Captain Nexville, the guard who had spoken earlier, stepped forward slightly. The Supreme Sovereign cannot be everywhere at once. Each system has a regional administrator who enforces imperial law. And how are these administrators chosen? Jake asked. They are appointed by the Supreme Sovereign based on their loyalty and strength, Vexthara said. Not their competence or experience? Lieutenant Ben Carter asked. The question seemed to puzzle Vexthara. Loyalty is the highest competence. Strength is the greatest experience. But what if someone is loyal but terrible at managing resources? Chief Engineer Tony Martinez asked. What if they're strong in battle but weak at economics? Then they are replaced, Vexthara said simply. By who? Dr. Chun asked. Another loyal but incompetent administrator? The room fell quiet again. Jake could see that they were hitting on something important. The Empire system looked strong from the outside, but it might be weaker than anyone realized. Supreme Sovereign. Captain Nexville said carefully, if I may ask, when was the last time you personally visited the outer systems? Vexthara's glow shifted to orange. The Supreme Sovereign does not need to personally visit every insignificant world. When? Jake pressed gently. 15 years ago, one of the other guards said quietly. The rebellion on Keth Prime. Rebellion? Commander Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. I thought your empire was perfectly stable. It was a minor uprising, Vexthara said quickly. Quickly crushed. How minor? Dr. Chun asked, pulling out his tablet again. Because our deep space sensors have been picking up some interesting radio signals from your territory. Sounds like there might be more unrest than you're letting on. Tony Martinez nodded. We've detected weapons fire signatures from at least 12 different systems in the past year. That seems like a lot for a perfectly ordered empire. Captain Nexville and the other guards exchanged meaningful looks. Jake could tell they knew more than their Supreme Sovereign was admitting. Perhaps, Jake said slowly, your system isn't working as well as it used to. The Empire is eternal, Vexthara declared, but his voice cracked on the word eternal. Everything changes, Jake said gently. Empires rise and fall. Technologies advance. People's needs evolve. Maybe it's time to consider that ruling through. Fear might not be the best long-term strategy. And what would you suggest instead? Captain Nexville asked, ignoring the angry look from his Supreme Sovereign. Jake stood up and walked to the wall display. With a few touches, he brought up a star map showing Earth and its nearby colonies. Look at this. Humanity controls about 30 star systems. Not as many as your empire, but here's the difference. Every single one of those systems chose to join us. Chose? Vexthara's glow brightened with confusion. How does a world choose to be conquered? It doesn't get conquered, Commander Rodriguez explained. It gets invited to join. We offer trade partnerships, defense agreements, shared technology. If they want to join the Earth Alliance, they vote on it. Vote? Another guard spoke up for the first time. The population votes? Every adult citizen gets a say, Dr. Chun. Confirmed. Sometimes they say yes, sometimes they say no. When they say no, we respect that decision and remain friends. That's impossible, Vexthara said. Inferior species cannot make such decisions for themselves. Why not? Jake asked. Who decided they were inferior, you? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Vexthara's crystal body flickered through several colors before settling on a dim purple. The Empire determines the value of all species. He said finally, based on what criteria? Dr. Chun asked, genuinely curious. Based on ... Vexthara started, then stopped. Based on their ability to serve the Empire. So anyone who doesn't want to serve your Empire is automatically inferior? Commander Rodriguez asked. Yes, no, that is ... Vexthara's glow flickered frantically. That is how it has always been. Captain Nexville stepped closer to the humans. What you're describing, this alliance of willing participants, does it actually work? Do the member worlds remain loyal without force? More loyal than you might expect, Jake said. When people choose to be part of something, they're more invested in making it succeed. When the Rigel colony was attacked by pirates last year, ships from 6 different worlds came to help defend it. Nobody ordered them to. They came because they wanted to protect their friends. Friends, one of the guards repeated the word like he was trying to understand its meaning. Allies choose to fight together, Tony Martinez explained. Subjects are forced to fight for their masters. Which do you think fights harder? Vexthara's glow had faded to almost nothing. The Empire's subjects fight with absolute dedication, do they? Jake asked softly. Or do they fight because they're afraid of what happens if they don't? Fear is a powerful motivator, Vexthara insisted. In the short term, Dr. Chun agreed. But fear also makes people want to escape. How much of your military budget goes to preventing rebellions instead of exploring new territory or improving technology? The guards were looking very uncomfortable now. Captain Nexville cleared his throat. Supreme Sovereign, perhaps we should consider what these humans are proposing. They propose chaos, Vexthara snapped, some of his old fire returning. They propose the destruction of order itself, do we? Jake asked. Look around this room. Do you see chaos? We're having a civilized conversation. Nobody's shooting at anybody. Nobody's being forced to do anything they don't want to do. Yet we still got here, Commander Rodriguez added. We still built these ships, still reached the stars, still created a functioning civilization. All without a supreme ruler telling us what to do. But how do you make decisions? Another guard asked. If no one is in charge, how do you choose? Which direction to go? We discuss it, Jake said. We argue about it. We try different approaches and see what works best. Sometimes we make mistakes, but we learn from them and try again. That sounds terribly inefficient, Vexthara said. Maybe, Tony Martinez agreed, but it's also flexible. When we encounter new problems, we can adapt quickly. When old solutions stop working, we can change them. Your empire has been doing things the same way for 3,000 years, Dr. Chun observed. What happens when the old ways stop working? The question seemed to hit Vexthara like a physical blow. His glow dimmed even further, and for a moment, Jake thought the Supreme Sovereign might actually collapse. The old ways always work, Vexthara said weakly, do they? Captain Nexville asked quietly. Supreme Sovereign, we've been fighting rebellions for the past 50 years. The outer systems barely obey our commands anymore. Our technology hasn't advanced since before I was born. When was the last time the Empire actually grew stronger instead of just trying to hold on to what it already had? The silence that followed was deafening. Vexthara stood motionless, his crystal body barely glowing, while his guards watched him with expressions that Jake could only describe as sympathetic. What are you suggesting? Vexthara asked finally, his voice barely above a whisper. Jake looked around the room at his crew, then at the alien guards who were listening with obvious interest. We're suggesting that maybe there's a better way. Maybe instead of ruling through fear, you could try leading through cooperation. Maybe instead of forcing people to serve you, you could invite them to work with you. And if they refuse, then you respect their choice and move on, Commander Rodriguez said. There are plenty of worlds in the galaxy. You don't need to control all of them. But what would I be if not the Supreme Sovereign of everything? Vexthara asked, and Jake heard something in his voice that sounded almost like panic. You could be a leader, Dr. Chun suggested gently. Someone people choose to follow because they trust your judgment, not because they fear your weapons. You could be a partner, Jake added. Someone who works with others to solve problems and build something better. You could be a friend, Lieutenant Carter said quietly. Vexthara stared at the young human officer for a long moment. Friend? Someone you trust and who trusts you back. Someone you help when they're in trouble and who helps you when you need. The Supreme Sovereign of the Zephyrian Empire stood in the middle of a human conference room, surrounded by beings who had offered him something no one had ever offered before. Supreme Sovereign Vexthara stood motionless for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. His crystal body had dimmed to almost nothing, and Captain Jake Morrison could see the alien's 4 arms trembling slightly. The massive being, who had entered the room demanding immediate surrender, now looked lost and confused. Friend, Vexthara repeated the word slowly, like he was trying to understand a foreign concept. I do not understand this word in the context you use it. Doctor. Alex Chun leaned forward in his chair. A friend is someone you choose to spend time with. Someone whose company you enjoy. Someone you help because you want to, not because you have to. But what do they give in return? Vexthara asked. The same thing, Commander Lisa Rodriguez said with a gentle smile. Help when you need it, company when you're lonely. Someone to talk to when you have problems. Without being ordered to provide these things? Without being ordered, Jake confirmed. Friends help each other because they care about each other. Captain Nexville stepped closer to his Supreme Sovereign. Your Magnificence, perhaps we should. Consider what these humans are offering. What are they offering? Vexthara asked, his voice barely audible. Jake stood up and walked over to face the massive alien directly. Even though Vexthara was 12 feet tall, Jake didn't feel intimidated anymore. The Supreme Sovereign looked more like a confused child than a galactic conqueror. We're offering to be your friends, Jake said simply. Earth and the Zephyrian. Empire, working together as equals. Trading knowledge, sharing resources, helping each other when problems arise. As equals, Vexthara repeated. But the Empire is superior to all other civilizations. Is it? Chief Engineer Tony Martinez asked. Your ships are bigger than ours, but are they better? Your empire is older than our alliance, but is it stronger? Of course it is stronger, Vexthara said, but there was no conviction in his voice. Lieutenant. Ben Carter pulled out a small device and set it on the conference table. This is a communicator that connects instantly to any point in human space. No delay, no interference. Our newest ships can travel between star systems in days instead of weeks. Our computers can solve problems that would take your empire's best minds years to figure out. Impossible, Vexthara said. The Empire has the most advanced technology in the galaxy. The most advanced technology from 1,000 years ago, Dr. Chun corrected gently. But technology advances when people are free to experiment, to try. New ideas to fail and try again. Captain Nexville picked up the communicator and examined it closely. This device is smaller than our emergency beacons, but you claim it works across interstellar distances? Try it, Tony Martinez said. Call any frequency you want. Nexville operated the device with surprising skill. Within seconds, a voice came. Through speaking in the Zephyrian language. The captain's eyes widened with surprise. That was Regional Administrator Kexner from the Antares system, Nexville said in amazement. He is 47 light-years away. And you reached him instantly. Commander Rodriguez said. No delay, no static, perfect clarity. How is this possible? Vexthara demanded. Quantum entanglement communication, Dr. Chun explained. A technology we developed 15 years ago through cooperative research between multiple worlds. Number. Single planet could have created it alone, but working together, we solved problems none of us could handle individually. Working together, one of the other guards said thoughtfully. The Empire does not work together. The Empire commands and subjects obey. And that's why your technology hasn't advanced, Jake said. Innovation requires freedom to think differently, to question old assumptions, to try approaches that might fail. But if subjects are free to question, they might rebel, Vexthara said weakly. Or they might come up with better ideas, Tony Martinez suggested. Some of our best inventions came from people who disagreed with the established way of doing things. Captain Nexville was still examining the communicator with fascination. Supreme Sovereign, perhaps these humans have wisdom we should consider. They want to destroy the Empire, Vexthara said, but he sounded uncertain. Do we? Jake asked. We're not threatening to attack your worlds or overthrow your government. We're suggesting that maybe there's a better way to organize society. A way that makes everyone stronger instead of just the person at the top. Commander Rodriguez added. Dr. Chun opened his tablet and showed a display to the aliens. Look at this data. It shows the economic output of human colonies over the past 50 years. See how it keeps growing? That's because when people are free to innovate and trade freely, everyone benefits. Now look at this data from your empire. Tony Martinez added, showing another display. Economic output has been flat for the past century. Production is declining in the outer systems. Your empire isn't growing stronger. It's slowly getting weaker. The guards gathered around the displays, studying the information with obvious interest. Even Vexthara moved closer, though he tried to appear disinterested. These numbers could be false, Vexthara said. They could be, Jake agreed. But they're based on your own empire's reports. The data comes from your regional administrators. Captain Nexval looked up from the tablet. Supreme Sovereign, these numbers match what we've been seeing in our security reports. The rebellions, the declining production, the difficulty recruiting new soldiers. You think the empire is failing? Vexthara asked, and for the first time his voice held genuine fear. We think the empire is stuck, Dr. Chun said kindly. You've been successful for so long that you stopped adapting. But the galaxy keeps changing whether you change with it or not. What would you have us do? Vexthara asked. Abandon 3,000 years of tradition? Keep the good parts, Jake suggested. Your empire has brought peace to hundreds of worlds. You've ended wars, established trade routes, created a common language for diplomacy. Those are good things. But maybe change the parts that aren't working, Commander Rodriguez added. Maybe give people more say in how they're governed. Maybe focus on cooperation instead of domination. Maybe try being friends with your subjects instead of their master, Lieutenant Carter said quietly. The room fell silent again. Jake could see that something important was happening behind Vexthara's glowing eyes. The Supreme Sovereign was thinking, really thinking, probably for the first time in decades. If we were to consider such changes, Vexthara said slowly, how would we begin? Captain Nexval straightened up with obvious excitement. We could start with the outer systems, the ones that have been causing the most trouble. Instead of sending more troops, we could send negotiators. We could ask them what they need instead of telling them what to provide, another guard suggested. We could invite them to participate in decisions that affect them, a third guard added. Vexthara looked around at his guards with surprise. You have all been thinking about this. For years, Supreme Sovereign, Captain Nexval admitted. The old methods aren't working anymore. We've been hoping for a chance to try something different. And you humans would help us learn these new methods? Vexthara asked, turning back to Jake. If you want us to, Jake said. We could start small. Maybe one star system as a test case. See how cooperation works compared to domination. And if it fails, then you try something else, Dr. Chun said. That's how progress works. You experiment, you learn, you adapt. Tony Martinez stood up and walked to the window overlooking space. You know what the really interesting thing is? Your empire and our alliance both want the same basic things. Peace, prosperity, security for our people. We just have different ideas about how to achieve those goals. Maybe we could achieve them better by working together, Commander Rodriguez suggested. Vexthara was quiet for a long time, his crystal body slowly brightening from dim yellow to soft blue. When he finally spoke, his voice was different. Not the booming proclamation of absolute authority, but the thoughtful words of someone genuinely considering new possibilities. I came here expecting to accept your surrender, he said. Instead, you offer partnership. I came prepared to demonstrate my power. Instead, you show me my weaknesses. I came believing the empire was perfect. Instead, you suggest it could be better. Change is scary, Jake said gently, but it's also the only way to grow. Will you help us? Vexthara asked, and the question sounded almost like a plea. "We'd be honored to," Jake said, extending his hand in the human gesture of friendship. Vexthara looked at the offered hand for a moment, then slowly reached out with one of his forearms. When their hands touched, his crystal body flared with golden light, brighter than anyone had ever seen. Captain Nexval and the other guards began glowing as well, their colors shifting to shades that indicated joy and hope. For the first time in thousands of years, the Zephyrian Empire had friends. 3 months later, Jake stood on the observation deck of a joint human-Zephyrian research station orbiting the planet New Harmony in the former Outer Territories. The first cooperative colony was thriving beyond everyone's expectations. Former rebels and Imperial soldiers worked side by side, building something neither could have created alone. "Captain Morrison," a familiar voice said behind him. Jake turned to see Vexthara approaching, but the former Supreme Sovereign looked different now.